there was a time that I wasn't able to control anything at all related to prognosis or my treatment course or anything. The only thing that I could control was the amount of hair left on my head. And so it is with that I decided to go ahead and have a head shaving party. And it was an opportunity for my friends and family to kind of get back at me by taking a swipe at my hair. My husband joined in solidarity, and I was bald for probably the better part of a year after going through 5 months of chemo and 3 surgeries. And luckily, I was able to get the best possible result from treatment and had my AD baby, who's my after diagnosis baby, and my BC baby, who's my before cancer baby. So I'm really, really grateful to be here, like still alive and doing work that has impacted me on such a deep level and has impacted so many patients and healthcare professionals too. Okay, so we knew that there was a lot of burnout already amongst healthcare professionals, and then COVID hit. So what are your stressors during COVID? And you can go ahead and put it in the chat box. What have your stressors been during COVID? Is it related to your roles in healthcare, the lack of adequate personal protective equipment? Yeah, online school, a new nanny, more work. So an increase in workload in general, both perhaps at home and at work. Absolutely, the fear of the unknown in general is a really powerful stressor. Any other sources of stress for you during this? Absolutely, the health of older relatives. So potentially taking care of the vulnerable populations. Absolutely trying to study for a board exam. With the pandemic and the uncertainty and the fear and this craziness with some of the timing related to a lot of prior planned events, there's always a risk that things will get canceled. Absolutely. So there's a change in all the workflows. The recreational activity options are nearly non-existent, particularly for the children. And so there's a lot more screen time for all adults and for kids potentially. And then there's some financial stressors too. I know that some of my colleagues have lost their positions. Those not in healthcare have lost their jobs. So there's an all-around increase in a variety of different stressors. Yeah, so being productive while understaffed. Yeah, so everyone's workload in different ways has increased. So I wanted to go back to the slideshow. So the COVID-related stressors are actually published. There's been a lot of data that's been coming out, but probably not as fast as we would like, especially those of us who are healthcare professionals. And while this article was published just in July and it was in a medical journal, I think that these stressors really speak to how universal the type of stress and anxiety the entire world potentially is feeling. So particularly during the beginning of coronavirus, there was this scarcity about personal protective equipment, the need to use and reuse masks that might not be as reliable as we would have hoped. And then the whole unknown with regards to coronavirus and asymptomatic carriers, and if you have become infected and whether or not you're at risk for infecting others at home and at work. And for us healthcare professionals, many of our patients are in the vulnerable populations for increased risk of complications from COVID. We're not really sure what kind of support exists, both at work and at home. And then our own personal needs have fallen to the wayside because there might be an increased need to put out fires that seem more pressing. And then the whole childcare and schooling, as was already brought up, with regards to now Zoom school, online schooling, distance learning, and then for those who are going in person, the fear of the kids bringing something home from school, and then being like the patient zero of the school and spreading it at school and then also at home. We talked about the increased needs, and then a lot of healthcare professionals nowadays feel like they don't have enough information about the virus to be able to be as confident in treatment and management decisions. And that's a very unnerving type of emotion that we feel, this uncertainty. And really, I always assume that everyone is doing the best that they can, and healthcare professionals especially. And then, of course, on top of all of this, the heightened racist tensions in the United States currently in all aspects of our life. So with coronavirus, it becomes this perfect storm where burnout, which is a syndrome that's characterized by chronic exposure to work-related stress resulting in basically emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a low sense of personal accomplishment, becomes intertwined with post-traumatic stress disorder. And there's a lot of overlap between the two. And we also know that during the pandemic, as evidenced by the earlier H1N1 epidemic, the healthcare professionals coming out of taking care of patients were having PTSD at rates of 10%. And we're already several fold exponentially higher in the caseloads in the US. And so you can imagine that when coronavirus is better controlled, healthcare professionals are going to be at higher risk of having these mental health issues. So the burnout rates were already high before, on average about 44%. And the pandemic just basically has increased that even more. So there's a call for earlier interventions, but the problem is that there's a bottleneck effect that's happening right now. Mental health needs are way higher than mental health professionals right now, both in the need for child psychologists, for instance, all the way up to adult and geriatric psychiatry. But the earlier that someone gets help, the better outcomes they have with regards to their mental health. So the other aspect is that before coronavirus happened, a lot of different healthcare systems and different workplace environments had this victim blaming mentality where they would slap on a yoga program or a mindfulness program and say, here, you meditate, you do the yoga, build resilience, and come back to work refreshed, where we know from literature that it's really the systems-based interventions that can help improve health and wellness on a more impactful level. So I wanted to share with all of you, the artwork is done by my friend and colleague, Dr. Saira Malik Rahman, and she has her own online exhibit, if you will, called Art in the Time of COVID. And they're really provocative images, so I highly recommend that you check them out. And some of the artwork is available for sale in terms of prints. So I wanted to introduce a couple of really practical tips for all of you to take away when dealing with stressors in the time of this pandemic. And I came up with this acronym, and I really, really like acronyms because they're easy to remember. This acronym, My Now. So whenever you find yourself getting stressed, uncomfortable in a particular situation, perhaps checking in with yourself, going through this mnemonic of My Now. And we'll go through each of these. So in terms of sources of stressors, it's going into like cognitive behavioral therapy and coaching principles, remembering that our thoughts, however disturbing or however incongruent they are that you feel with your authentic self, they aren't you, they aren't your identity. And a lot of times, if you question your thoughts and their validity, you might find that your thoughts are actually quite false. And so you are under no obligation to believe your thoughts, because thoughts can be a very strong source of stressors. You get to choose whether or not you want to believe your thoughts or not. And then one aspect about this pandemic that was especially afflicting for me, especially in the beginning, was this need to feel like I was getting all of the information about everything related to the pandemic all the time, because there was this sense of the unknown and the fear of that. And I felt like I was on the search for some hidden answer that would be somewhere in the online news or social media, when in fact it just basically fed into more and more anxiety and more stress. So we know from psychology literature that taking a news fast is actually really good for mental health, and that taking in very intentional social media breaks are also really great for your mental health. So maybe, just maybe, and this is a suggestion for you, you be very mindful. And mindfulness, as a reminder, is paying attention on purpose to the present moment without any judgment. So can you bring a mindful lens to how much TV you're watching, how much social media you're scrolling, how many news articles you're reading? Maybe you be very intentional about limiting that consumption into just your local and maybe state news, as opposed to having to feel this impossible burden of trying to catch up on all things COVID related with the entire world. Because right now that's basically impossible to do. So much data is coming out, and the discernment of the quality of the data isn't as stringently there as it usually is with regards to different diseases. So I urge you all to think about your amount of media consumption and the quality of media consumption. So some reliable sources for data related to coronavirus 19 include the San Diego Public Health, so your local public health department, and also the local hospitals. For those healthcare professionals, you might get like a daily bulletin about the status of coronavirus in your hospital. So maybe you try just limiting yourself to keeping up to date about that. The other thing that coronavirus brings up is this tendency for habitual potential maladaptive coping mechanisms to come about. So there's a lot of discomfort, there's a lot of stress, anxiety, fear that is universal right now. And many of our tendencies is to push away the discomfort, to push away the negativity, to push away and resist what we're feeling. But are you able to notice with mindfulness? So simply being aware of the feeling of the discomfort that you're noticing, providing some space, and actually like giving yourself the permission to feel your feelings, regardless of how uncomfortable that may be. And then are you able to name what you're feeling? Because there's a adage that is in psychology, what you name, you tame. So by naming what you are feeling, you're actually changing a little bit of your brain circuitry so that it downregulates the fight or flight centers that have been activated because of an emotion that you're feeling that's uncomfortable for you. And then thinking about this time where many of us are at home, either working from home or taking care of children or being at home, there's this increased sense of social isolation. But can this be an opportunity for you to literally slow down? And what are some characteristics that you would like to practice, cultivate, learn? Are we able to fight this tendency for human brains to have negative attention bias? That is, we hang on to negative things, emotions, situations, thoughts like Velcro, and then the good things that happen to us or that we feel are like Teflon. So can this be an opportunity for you to become more aware and practice mindfulness formally? Can you cultivate more compassion for yourself, giving yourself a break and not being so hard on yourself, not having so much self-judgment? Can this be a time where you start a gratitude journal practice? We know that out of Duke, writing 3 things that you're grateful for every day improves empathy, improves mood, and it's a really cheap way to journal. Just writing 3 things down that you're grateful for every day has tremendous benefits on your brain. Can you be more loving? And is this an opportunity for the world to unite and become more kind to ourselves and to each other? Another aspect for coronavirus is that, is this an opportunity for you to think about what values are important to you? So how would you like to live your life, especially after the coronavirus pandemic? Because even though the end is, we don't know when the end is going to be, of when things can quote unquote go back to normal, and we don't even know if things will ever go back to normal. What are the values that you want to live and abide by? For me, they are authenticity, so showing up as myself wherever I'm at, and meeting myself with compassion, and also compassion for others. So authenticity and compassion are my 2 values that I try to live by every day. Coronavirus is also an opportunity to think critically about how you're doing with regards to where the priority of health lies for you. So the 5 pillars of health in general are getting adequate sleep, so 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night that's consolidated as much as possible. Nutrition, so are you eating a more plant-forward, plant-based diet? The Mediterranean diet has amazing amounts of anti-inflammatory data and preventative data against chronic diseases. One good rule of thumb is to eat a variety of vegetables and fruits, 5 to 9 servings, and a rainbow variety of colors to ensure that you're getting a variety of nutrients from the source. And then stress reduction. So as I've already shared, mindfulness is my stress reduction tool, but maybe it doesn't resonate for you. So what does resonate for you? What is something that you can incorporate into your day-to-day life that helps you reduce stress? Exercise, so moving your body at a moderate intensity, 30 minutes most days of the week is the general recommended amount of exercise one should do for optimal health. Incidentally, also exercise at that amount also boosts your immune system. So in the time of the pandemic, really, really important to be prioritizing things that help our immune system stay strong. And while I'm in California, and many of you are in California as well, the wildfires have really deteriorated the air quality. And as a pulmonologist, all of my patients were having issues with their chronic lung diseases during the times where air quality was poor. And yes, that means a lot of times that you can't go outside to exercise, but try not to use it as an excuse that you don't exercise for that day because you can't go outside. So thinking about maybe checking out a new YouTube fitness video or doing some freestyle dance in your own home. And then connection. So I want to thank all of you for being here as part of this community in connection and in community, but making intentional choices to reach out to friends and family, have scheduled perhaps online Zoom or FaceTime meetings, phone calls, even snail mail, with perhaps taking this as an opportunity to write letters or thank you cards. Writing in and of itself is a very meditative experience as well. So really thinking about prioritizing your pillars of health during this time. And then I had mentioned maladaptive coping behaviors before, but can you bring a mindful lens to them? So if you notice urges towards maladaptive coping mechanisms, and there's a whole myriad of them. In the beginning, we were seeing empty rows in grocery stores and in other types of shops that didn't carry any more toilet paper because people were panic buying. That still happens to a certain extent, but not as much. There is potentially an increased risk of stress eating. So a lot of people have been gaining weight during the coronavirus pandemic because of stress and using food as a potential stress coping mechanism that might not serve, especially when the consumption is of foods that are not going to serve your body or your immune system. Some people need to numb out with watching TV or movies and using other forms of media as escapism. And then substance abuse also is a problem, especially during a pandemic. So are you able to notice the urges that you have with regards to your old habitual patterns of coping? And are you able to intentionally notice the urge and notice the craving, label it for what it is, and see what happens? Sometimes it's very uncomfortable to live through and experience that urge, but then giving yourself the space to feel the feelings of that craving or the urge might be enough for you to respond in a more compassionate way to what you're feeling at that moment. And perhaps you choose a different activity or a different mindset with regards to the need for whatever craving it was that you desired, and one that serves you even better. I also want to remind everyone, especially with very recent events, that truly, as hard as we try, we really cannot control the actions or thoughts of others. What we can control is our own response to the actions of others. You can also train yourself to have thoughts that serve you better, that are more constructive, that are more compassionate. And the other thing about values and how it's so important for you to come up with what values are truly important for you is that your thoughts, feelings, and actions, if in doubt about what to do with any of those, what's the next aligned step, thought, feeling, action that goes with your values? So that's a good, easy way to think about different things that might be on your plate that you think that you might do or have to do, when in fact, if these perceived obligations aren't in alignment with your values, then asking yourself, like, do I really have to do this? And perhaps the answer is no. So, in summary, I wanted to remind all of you that all of those different tips can be wrapped up in this acronym called My Now. So, M is for the mindful media consumption. Y is to remind yourself that everyone's going to have thoughts, but the thoughts are not you. You don't have to believe your thoughts. You can't control the thoughts of other people nor their actions, but you can control you. N is for noticing. So, noticing all of the maladaptive coping mechanisms that through decades of life, many of us have developed. But instead, can you choose to feel the feelings, the urge, the craving, name it for what it is, provide a little bit of space for you to experience that just as it is. And perhaps that provides a way for you to notice different, healthier responses to the urge or the craving. Asking yourself, what is it that I need? And then O is that coronavirus 19 is perhaps an opportunity for you to finally prioritize you, your health, and it's an opportunity for you to literally slow down in many different aspects of life. And then W is to really ask yourself, what are your values? What are the priorities in your life that are important to you? And so I am going to stop screen sharing, and I'd like to hear from all of you about, lots of comments, about what has helped you during this time of the pandemic. And we can have you unmute. Yeah, Jen, I can totally relate. Feeling like the data is coming out at such fast speeds about coronavirus and feeling this unspoken need to keep up with it when in fact it was just not sustainable, and it was just also increasing my anxiety level too. So I can definitely relate to that. So I'm wondering what has helped all of you with stress reduction during the pandemic, because we have a lot of collective wisdom here. So I'd like for someone to share, and you can go ahead and raise your hand if you like, or just unmute yourself.
I'm waiting for somebody else to talk, but if you want, I can go first.
Hi, Carolina. Good to see you. Where are you calling in from?
I am calling from Roanoke, Virginia at the moment. I used to be
Wonderful.
closer to you in San Diego, but now we're here on all the way on the East Coast again.
Yeah.
Thank you again for including me and inviting me. I love being part of this group. I am myself on a mission to run a mindfulness program for children. And trying to do prevention at the elementary school level. And the way that I've been doing it, taking it from my own experience, what has helped me cope is I am a very musical oriented person. Even though I'm an engineer that works in innovation and in neuroscience, music has always been part of my life. So one thing that has worked for me is to write songs. I mean, and of course that doesn't enter the context of everybody. Not everybody, may be a songwriter, but writing itself helps a lot, right? I mean, my understanding is just the practice of putting your thoughts down on the paper, and basically expressing yourself. I mean, expressing your feelings. I've been trying to do that for my own songs, and trying to connect to somebody else's feelings as well, and stressors, and then try to see how through my writing I can alleviate a little bit of, someone's pain and stress, and at the same time that helps me too. because it helps me reflect on my own. So it has been a very good cope mechanism, I guess, during this COVID-19 pandemic, to write more. It has helped me greatly. So I hope, somebody find it helpful as well to write, even if you don't gonna share that with anybody, and it's just for yourself, and that's okay too. I mean, I try to incentive and motivate the children to do that. It doesn't have to be that they need to share what they write with people unless they want to, but it could be just for themselves. This is how I feel, and this is how this is what I'm going to do to change that feeling, like you said, Nietzsche, to do some, take an action, because we are in control of our own actions, but we cannot control everybody else's. So, we write something that we feel, and then we write something that how we think we might, help ourselves alleviate that. So there you go. That's my little piece.
Thank you, Carolina. Yes, and you'll have to come back and share some of your songs with us. I know how talented
Yes,
a singer you
absolutely.
are.
Absolutely. Yes, of
Yeah, so
course.
the expressive arts are a great way for stress relief. We know that from medical literature, like art therapy is immensely powerful. Journaling, and at Mindful Healthcare Collective, we have monthly proprioceptive writing meditations that I invite all of you to join. So yeah, thinking about what resonates with you as a form of expression and expressive art, whether it be writing or singing or dancing or um, producing artwork, what resonates with you. Someone mentioned that they are taking the mindful self-compassion course. Yeah, so is this an opportunity? Some people might have a little bit more quote unquote downtime than others. Is this an opportunity for you to delve into the skill of mindfulness through like a mindful self-compassion course, and even the mindfulness-based stress reduction course that I'll be teaching with Dr. Sarah Dill on October 18th. Mindfulness for children need to be in all schools. A lot of schools are already teaching it. And if it's not labeled as mindfulness, it's labeled as like an awareness exercise or breathing exercise. But also in the pediatric literature, great data regarding mindfulness and stress, anxiety decreases. For my own kids, well, the 2.5-year-old is a little bit too young to really practice formally with me, but some tips for that are to get a like bells, or even using a meditation app like Insight Timer, where you can have the children pick the different sounds that the app will play for the timer. And for the 2.5-year-old, maybe it's just paying attention to the beginning and the end of the sound, so that you're training this focus of attention from start to finish of just one sound. So what, like 10-20 seconds, depending on the type of bell that's played. For my 10-year-old, she can actually do a sit with me in terms of like a sitting awareness of breath. And she also sometimes will practice mindful movement with yoga. So finding different activities that are creative, and also noticing that you can remind yourself that mindfulness can be incorporated in anything that you're doing or not doing, and that it truly is a lifestyle that you can cultivate and get better at. Yes, gratitude journals for sure. And absolutely, we, as healthcare professionals, as healers, as caregivers, oftentimes we put ourselves last, but if anything, in the coronavirus pandemic, we can't take care of other people unless we take care of ourselves. And that requires the intentional self-compassion and nurturing that many of us are not reflexively trained to do because of a variety of reasons, our upbringing, our occupational training. Yes, yoga, community, definitely, with the coaching, sharing passions, being intentional about being in community like all of you are today. taking mindful beach walks. Yeah. And Carolina did share her songs in the website. Oh, that's awesome, Carolina. You have albums. So cool. We'll have to have like a live concert for you. Um, Anyone else want to share about what's been what's come up during the pandemic for you, whether it be like a stressor that I didn't mention, or something that you have felt to be really helpful for your own processing of everything that's going on? You can just unmute yourselves or.
Hey, Ni-Chang, it's Jessie.
Hello. Hey.
I was just thinking that I'm kind of a different bent, but just the slowing down allows you to notice like the things that bother you more or the things that help more. And in our usual fast-paced life, I had a lot less awareness. And it goes both ways, right? Because you notice the things that are not helping, but you also notice the things that make it different. So just being much more self-aware and then being honest about that, because you may or may not like what you find or what you see. And so realizing, just having the opportunity, and I don't know if it's time or space, or it's just we're sort of forced inside to think about it, even when we're not doing other things. And so I think for me, that's been something that I just is different. So I thought I would share that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jessie. So this slowing down affords a lot of different opportunities for space to notice. And that's where the mindfulness can be so powerful. But like noticing more also in general, the negative thoughts, emotions might be more uncomfortable compared to our usual fast-paced lives. But I challenge that, could it be more healing? And could it be an opportunity for growth, for you to hold discomfort of these negative emotions and thoughts that are coming up, whether it be about oneself or other people? Can this be an opportunity to hold it with compassion and curiosity? Like a genuine curiosity of like, where are these emotions and thoughts coming from? And maybe journaling about it, maybe thinking about the origins of some of these thought patterns that might not serve. So thanks, Jessie. Other things that have helped during the pandemic?
I'll go. Hi.
Oh,
I don't really, I mean, I've been trying a lot of different things like beach walks and art and signing up for a whole bunch of different things, including MBSR with you guys and some other forms of, like I love Brené Brown, so I've done that with Yvonne. That's been amazing too. But more than anything, I feel like instead of that clear stream, my life has become in this pandemic like the ocean that's rough. Everything is churning, everything is coming up, everything is just being, crashing on the shore and then coming up again. And then there are times where it's absolutely serene and beautiful. And I think COVID is just one of the stressors, but it's been a forced way of really looking in and not denying anymore what is. I don't have many answers, but it has definitely really helped me tap into my own strength and I guess be mindful of what I am instead of looking at the others, like you said, to control their thoughts, their actions, their behaviors, realizing that only I can do that. So I think it has really helped me be a little bit more mindful. I don't have all the answers and I have a lot of work still to do, but I think because of COVID, it was a very much forced sit down right now and deal with this today, as opposed to just sweeping it under the rug and kind of going with what is, because that's easier to do. It doesn't take as much work. And just really realizing the strength that we all have. That has been pretty incredible for me to see. And I used to laugh at self-compassion and self-love. Like, it used to be these are words that I could never really understand. But I think I might have an inkling of self-compassion trickling in. So I'm really excited about that, and hopefully to grow more with that. Thank you.
That's so beautiful, Poonam. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So many metaphors with the ocean and life, and especially the coronavirus pandemic. I feel like coronavirus is like the great exposer and also the great cleanser in some respects. Like, you are definitely not alone in noticing that a lot of stuff from the past, like maybe things that you haven't even thought about for decades, is somehow surfacing. And can this time of being inside more serve us in a way that seeks to potentially reconcile old wounds, integrate better old traumas? Is this now the time to have the self-compassion to acknowledge and to get help and support? Because we're not in this alone. Like, there's this collective world suffering that's going on that is a tragedy, but also can that be a catalyst for all of us to notice what's important to us, notice what doesn't serve? Can we use it as an opportunity for compassion for ourselves and for others? That's my question for all of you. What else has helped, or what have you noticed during this pandemic time? Physiologically speaking, humans are tremendously resilient if we take care of our mind, body, and spirit. But if we abuse our mind, body, and spirit, then we lose our capacity for being intrinsically able to get back into a more balanced, homeostatic state. So who else would like to share? Any other thoughts? I'm also going to provide some, I love acronyms almost as much as Dr. Yvonne Ator, who's going to be doing a small group coaching session at 10 o'clock for everyone as well. So it's okay. So please join us for that. Maybe Dr. Mahoney, if you could put Yvonne's link for Thriving Idealists in the chat box for everyone, because that's going to start at 10 o'clock. I'm also going to leave you with 3 different acronyms, actually 4 different acronyms, and you get to pick and choose which one resonates with you. So if you find yourself in a stressful or uncomfortable situation, stop, let it rain, and take out your AAA card. So stop, S is to stop and pause whatever it is that you're doing. T is to take a breath, so take a mindful breath. O is to observe. So are you able to label and name the emotions that you're having, noticing the thoughts just as they are, kind of like clouds passing through the sky or leaves floating down a stream? Are you able to label and notice the body sensations? Oftentimes when there's some discomfort that arises, we are way more in our heads than we really need to be. But are you able to start noticing the stress response and how that feels in our own bodies? That in and of itself is an act of self-compassion and mindfulness. P is for then, are you able to proceed with greater skillful action? So RAIN is another acronym. R is for recognize the situation for being uncomfortable or stressful. A is to allow and accept that situation in that moment, just as it is, because it's already here and you're already experiencing it. You're already in that moment. I is to investigate. So similarly, investigating thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and maybe perhaps labeling with a more objective lens of what's going on externally. What's the external stressor really that's happening? And are you trying to fight reality? Is there a desire for you to resist reality? Because if it is, then you're going to lose 100% of the time. So are you able to allow and accept the situation and whatever you're feeling just as it is in that moment? And then N is to remind yourself that that particular stressful, uncomfortable situation is probably not a personal attack on your humanity or going to be immensely impactful on your life. It might be a pattern that you've noticed about a similar event or a series of events that have happened before in your life and might have a high likelihood of happening similarly again. So trying not to take uncomfortable and stressful events so personally. Oftentimes these events are like not your fault, and things that cause stress externally sometimes are completely out of your control. And then N is also for nurture. So nurturing and asking yourself, what is it that I need in this moment? So that you can approach the situation with your AAA card, which is allowing, accepting, and then proceeding with intentional, greater skillful action, as opposed to a habitually conditioned maladaptive coping behavior or a stress reaction, the fight or flight stress reaction. And it's been conditioned in all of us, but we have the capacity to change the way our brains are wired through formal, intentional mindfulness practice. Allowing, accepting, and action. All right, so does anyone have any questions before I close with a body scan practice? Questions, other thoughts? Okay, so I'm going to invite all of you to lay down. The body scan practice is a classical mindfulness-based stress reduction exercise, and it's traditionally done laying down. But if laying down creates too much pain or discomfort for you, you can also do this standing or sitting, or you can prop your legs up in what I call astronaut pose, which is basically propping your legs up on a chair so that your knees are bent at a 90-degree angle, so that your low back is flatter on the ground. So I'm going to invite all of you to go ahead and lay down or get into a position of comfort. And I have my meditation bells here that I use to lead practices, and they are nothing more than the beginning and end of practice. Nothing mystical about them at all. So choosing a position of comfort, closing eyes if you think that would serve, or lowering your gaze softly a couple of inches in front of you. Begin by noticing the contact of the supporting surface against your body. Perhaps that's the floor, a mat, a chair, couch. Whatever you've chosen to be upon right now, reminding you that it's providing you unconditional support. And as you're ready, I invite you to notice the breath at the nostrils, simply observing the breath coming in, out, perhaps noticing if there's a pause in between. Not trying to change the breath in any way, simply observing it. And now I'd like to invite you to broaden the breath to encompass your entire body from head to toe. So expanding your awareness, bringing your breath from head to toe. This expansiveness of noticing the entire body just as it is right now. And next, I'd like to invite you to narrow that beam of attention to rest upon your shoulders. So, this is a part of the body that many of us might notice tension, discomfort, pain, particularly if we are in times of stress. Perhaps it's a part of the body that we don't notice as much unless there is discomfort there. So, simply acknowledging whatever sensations are present for you right now in the shoulders. Not trying to change anything about the sensations of the shoulders, but simply noticing, observing. And if there are any particularly strong sensations that are arising for you, perhaps some that are uncomfortable or filled with tension, inviting you to simply notice and acknowledge that, providing permission and space for this acknowledgement that discomfort is here, or stress is here, or tension is here, pain is here. Reassuring to yourself that that's okay. This uncomfortable sensation that might be present for you in the shoulders is okay. And that you can sit with it. Are you able to notice the edges of particularly a patch of discomfort or tension? Does it exude any sort of color for you as you investigate this area more? And as you're ready, I invite you to metaphorically and literally bring your breath to the areas of discomfort and tension. And noticing if there's any new sensations that arise for you, perhaps a softening or a release, a sense of letting go. And as you're ready, I'm going to invite you to move up your attention to your neck. This complicated structure that connects the head to the rest of your body can also be a source of discomfort and stress for many of us. What's present for you in the neck right now? Not trying to change anything about the sensations that you're noticing in the neck. Giving yourself permission to feel whatever it is that you're noticing in the neck. And as thoughts, emotions, and other body sensations capture your attention, knowing that this mind wandering is totally normal for the human brain, but you can notice that and bring your attention back to your neck. And again, inviting, if there's any tension or discomfort there, the breath to that area, and noticing if there's anything that shifts or if things remain the same. Whatever your experience is in the neck is valid, is your truth. It is your reality right now. And as you're ready, bringing your attention to your jaw. Many of us might clench our teeth or grind our teeth when we're sleeping, more so perhaps during times of stress. Checking in with your jaw and noticing what position your jaw is in just right now. Noticing if there's any tension, discomfort, or perhaps you're already relaxed and your jaw is in a neutral position. Simply noticing. And with intention, you can choose to shift the position of your jaw in a way that might serve you better. Perhaps being cognizant about whether or not you are clenching and inviting relaxation to the jaw. And noticing the sensations of doing that, how that might impact the tone of your face. And then as you're ready, I'm going to invite you to notice once again your breath at the nostrils. Let's take a collective deep breath in through the nose, filling up, and then exhaling through your mouth like you're blowing out birthday candles. Trying to lengthen the exhales like 2 to 4 times longer than the inhales. In through the nose, like you're smelling roses, and exhaling through the mouth like you're blowing out birthday candles. And one last time, inhale through the nose, and exhaling through the mouth. And taking the next few moments to notice how you feel now compared to about 5 minutes ago before the start of this practice. Bringing a sense of gratitude to yourself for showing up, for being in community, for sharing, for being open to this past hour's experience. Blinking open eyes gently, letting the light back in. If you were laying down, moving very slowly into an upright posture. Just checking in and seeing how you feel now compared to 5 minutes ago. So I want to thank all of you for coming, for sharing, for being here. And please join Dr. Ator's event happening right now. It's open to everyone, healthcare professionals, and everyone not in healthcare as well. And with that, I will end And remind all of you that Dr. Sarah Dill and I will be teaching mindfulness-based stress reduction. Our next cycle is October 18th. And then for healthcare professionals, we also offer a mindful healing platinum package, mindful healers platinum package, where it includes the entire mindfulness-based stress reduction course, along with one-on-one coaching sessions with Dr. Jessie Mahoney, and also the CME accredited mindful physician course. So all of that happens on October 18th. I'll put in the link in the comments. I thank all of you for being here, and have a good rest of your weekend. Yes, and thank you, Dr. Mahoney, for reminding me. There's yoga for all tomorrow. Dr. Mahoney is also a certified fabulous yoga instructor. Highly recommend her classes. They're open for all levels.
All right.
Thank you.